Rosie Rewired is for women in tech already in the room, and for every girl hoping there is a seat for her. We talk honestly about work, wins, friction, and the future. No rose-colored myths, just rosy-colored truth. The music you are hearing is Seduction of Eve by Emma Langford, which carries its own story about choice, power, and consequence, something most of us recognize. Community is how we got here, and honest conversation is how we leave the door open for the next generation. Together, we can do it. Today I am joined by Cait Espe, Director of Customer Experience at Walla Software. Cait moved from a female-dominated leadership world into tech and discovered that having a seat at the table is not always guaranteed. In this conversation, we unpack the difference between mentors, sponsors, and allies, and why real growth often begins in discomfort. Join us. So today on Rosie Rewired, we are delighted to welcome Cait Espe, who is Director of Customer Experience at Walla Software. So thank you for joining us today, Cait.
Of course. Thank you, Tara. It's so good to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. So just as a little aside, Cait has been on other women in tech podcasts that we've run through MTMG, and she was an amazing guest, and we never got to the subject matter that we really want to get to today, which is how do we acquire better sponsors and allies as women in tech and at different stages of our career? So I know you have lots to say on the subject, so I'm just going to open the floor to you.
Well, perfect. Yes, I'm excited for the conversation. I think, for your viewers to kind of understand a little bit about my background and how I've come to this place and why I'm really interested in this conversation is the bulk of my early career started in salon and spa operations. I worked for a very prestigious luxury day spa and salon in the Seattle area for almost 15 years as a director of operations. And so it was a very female dominated workplace. I was very lucky, privileged, blessed to be able to have an environment that really fostered female leadership. Our voices were heard and valued. And we had all levels of, from entry all the way to senior level executive female kind of presence. And so when I jumped from there into tech, B2B Tech SaaS in 2019, it was quite a culture shock for me because I was so used to having a voice at the table and all of these powerful female voices around me as well that were uplifting other parts of organizations. And I very quickly realized that was not a universal experience. And so I think I learned a lot through that transition. It was a very difficult one at the time, but I'm very glad to have gone through that because now I know how I want to pay it forward as a female leader in tech. And I've had the opportunity to be on different advisory boards for women in STEM programs and, talk at various engagements of kind of that experience and really being able to lend my voice and experience to that conversation. So I'm really excited to dig in a little bit more with you.
Great. Well, that's because we're kindred spirits. We both did not come from tech. We were both in careers that there were powerful women to role model and to be peers as well. And so now when you make that jump and you realize, why is there only one woman at every table and there are no women in the boardroom table? So, yeah. So,
yeah,
again,
absolutely.
Time to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have seen a little bit of a shift. Also very fortunate that I now work as you mentioned, I'm at Walla Software, and we are also female co-owned. One of our founders is female. We have a really great executive team across our founders and owners and all the way kind of down across the organization. There is a very diverse and inclusive environment. And so I kind of feel like I've come back to my roots a little bit where I don't necessarily need to fight as hard for that voice. I still have the opportunity to be able to pay it forward through the experience that I've had. Again, I think that all of what I've gone through in terms of that kind of difficult period of transition has really allowed me to kind of take a different approach in terms of the organizations I want to be a part of, as well as my contributions to those organizations. And again, how I pay it forward to the broader kind of CS female leadership community as well.
Which is great.
Yeah.
So how have you found finding sort of mentors, sponsors, allies? And do you want to just sort of tell our audience a little bit about what the difference is between them, because I think there is a big difference and I don't think we always name it well.
Absolutely. And I think that was a very kind of early part of my experience, was really not understanding what level of support I could have really benefited from and really needed at the time to be able to get comfortable and confident very early as I jumped into tech. But in my opinion, as a female leader, especially in tech, we really need all of the above, right? You need a mentor who's really going to talk to you and support you in your growth and your experience, and just have some of that kind of thought leadership around that shared experience, trial by fire. What have we learned in the trenches, so to speak? And you also need to really put you in the position in which your voice can be heard. And so I think, a mentor talks to you, a sponsor talks about you, and a mentor
Right.
or an ally kind of helps to prepare you, whereas a sponsor really helps to position you. So, you using the example of, she deserves to be heard versus she deserves this role, she deserves this accolade or this experience. And so sometimes I've found through my own pathway that I can have a mentor who's also a really great sponsor, who's putting me in those positions, who's speaking about me when I'm not in the room. But there's also
Right.
been really great opportunities for me to have both sides in different people, because they're lending me different lenses of experience and exposure and all of the things. And I think that, as a female in leadership, you really need to identify kind of which adventure path you need at the time, and it will change over the course of your career and what experiences you're going through. And so there could
Right.
definitely be scenarios in which you really need a mentor to be able to have that thought leadership and prepare you. And then there's also times where you really need a sponsor to be able to speak about you in those, executive boardrooms, or
Right.
just even if you are in the room, to be able to put you in the position in which you can be heard and put into different positions.
Right. And so I've sort of also taken the approach that allies, so I think of mentors and sponsors can be men or women, preferably women,
Yeah.
because it's easier to model what you see. But then with an
Yeah.
ally, I sort of take the position that that is generally a man, because if we don't have men to stand with us and tell the other men in the room who might not be as open to it that, like, it's okay to trust them. They're good.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They're worthy. So that's been kind of my interpretation of it. So I wouldn't call it a
Yeah.
definition, but it's just how I experience it. So
No, I love that. I think you're bringing up a really good point, that we do need both of that kind of female and male presence. I think it's important in a diverse internal community within an organization. And I absolutely think that it benefits both sides. I've had sometimes some really healthy conversations with some male allies that they've asked, how can I be a better ally to you and to others in this space? And I said, okay, let's get into, and helping them be able to
right.
take a step back and see things from a different perspective. And it also helps me be able to adjust my approach and how I go into scenarios, because they're helping me understand the male perspective and why maybe I need to deliver a message
Right.
or an idea in a different way. And I'm also helping them understand where some of those kind of realities come into play as a female in a space that's pretty male dominated, so that they can have, again, that fresh perspective and really advocate on our behalf and ensure that our voices are heard. So I absolutely love what you brought up. And I think that having both sides of the aisle is just really important, especially at different phases of our career and depending on the organization you're a part of and the experiences that you have,
Right.
all of the things.
Exactly. Yeah. I agree. So it's and it is very different depending upon sort of, I know tech is a broad name that encompasses many things, but it seems
Yeah.
like there are different niches in tech where there is a more female centric thing versus, or a more, there's a little more parity in the male female ratios,
Ah,
particularly I think in like customer experience. And I feel like, is that right? So is
yeah.
it just because we're dealing with customers and we're, like the caretakers, or are we just as like hard as any other male cybersecurity?
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing to sort of look across the different niches and see where the parity and disparity lies. So
Oh, absolutely. And I've seen that certainly in my career. And I know it can be a little stereotypical, but, from my experience, most of the female executives live in an HR or marketing type of function, right? Sometimes maybe in operations. I've been fortunate to have leaders there. And I think in CS or CX, kind of see more female dominated, but it is a pretty diverse community from my experience. I'm part of a few different LinkedIn communities and things like that I've really gotten to kind of broaden the aperture of my sometimes biased perspective from that lens of saying, like, I'm just kind of used to now being the female that I have to fight, for my place and fight for my voice. And sometimes I can lose sight of the fact that there are plenty of really great male allies, peers that also live in this space. But I do think, to your point, that we tend to be looked at as the caregivers, the ones that lead with the heart versus the head. And I don't think that that's necessarily true, but we just position ourselves differently. And I think that the way that we approach business in general just comes from a different lens. I think that if we take care of our people, we take care of our customers, the economics will follow. And sometimes
Right.
that's not the harshest, clear path to revenue generation or things like that. But I really do believe that, my experience and others really lends itself to proving that that is still true. And
Right.
I think that we can lose sight of that in, all of the evolution that's taken place in business, kind of away from the traditional customer experience used to exist. Now things are heavily automated. We're using, global talent and things like that to really be as efficient as possible. And we can't lose sight of there's people behind all of this, and they
Exactly.
absolutely deserve to have a really great experience, and they deserve to be heard and have you advocate for them in those rooms as well.
Right. And that at the end of the day, if you don't have happy customers, you don't have a business.
Yeah,
So, like, what's your
exactly.
number one priority? It's not getting them in the door, it's keeping them in the door. So, that is a really, and I do think that that is sometimes lost on a lot of business models. So
Yeah.
it's really pretty critical for us. So you touched a little bit there on AI, and I don't know if you want to
Mhm.
jump into that pond for a moment.
Sure.
And I'll tell
Yeah.
you my conspiracy theory.
Oh, yes, I'm curious.
So I am concerned about how all of these LLMs are being fed documents that are all sort of patriarchal driven.
Mm. Yeah.
And now we are expanding their knowledge infinitely and rapidly. And
Yeah.
do you think that women are going to be left behind more or less in the full blown age of AI?
That's a really interesting kind of idea and theory. That's not necessarily a lens that I've taken before as I think about AI. I think of if you're not thinking about AI, you're already behind, right? It's coming whether or not you like it. And so in my opinion,
It's here.
and the way that I really frame it is really looking at how we can have it be a supporting factor to all of the things that we're doing. It's not meant to replace the people. It's not meant to replace the experience that we're providing, but it's really meant to help us be as efficient and effective as possible in doing that. But I think you're right. There's absolutely something to be said about any of the LLMs that we are talking about do tend to kind of lose some of that humanistic approach, and they're delivering very kind of specific messaging, specific answers that don't necessarily draw upon the relationship aspect or the emotions of what's behind the questions you're asking or the issues and challenges that you're having. And so I do think that as I think about kind of the female aspect of all of that, I think where we can absolutely help influence and where I think it's really important is making sure that we're helping those machines learn different ways. I'm constantly talking to my AI tools about make this more human, make it more conversational. You know me by now. You know that
Right.
this isn't going to be how I want it to be approached. And so I do think that we constantly need to be helping it educate and kind of redefine how it's approaching its answers and what it's teeing up, because I think that that's where everybody gets the most nervous from my experience is that they don't want to lose that aspect of the human experience. I think it's really important.
Right. And I mean, again, it's another one of those things that it still requires a human to put the prompt in. So if you don't know how to prompt the LLM or ask it to do
Yeah.
what you want, like it's not going to do it. So there's a little safety there for us humans. I don't think
Yeah.
we're going to be, run out of town by the machines quite yet. Maybe later. But
The thing with AI that I don't love that I'm trying to kind of work through is that it doesn't tell you that it doesn't know how to answer you, or it doesn't know, it will always tee up something. And
right.
so I do think that that's also something that I'm constantly trying to in the AI experience that I'm engaged in is really figuring out ways that I can help it identify different solutions rather than saying, here's an answer, because I just don't
Right.
know how to tell you I don't know.
Right.
Which
Yes. So
maybe
like that's
translates
always
back to
part
kind
of
of the
my
female versus male experience too.
maybe maybe we should feed it a whole bunch of men are from
Which,
Mars, women are from Venus
yeah,
weekly.
we definitely could. Yeah.
But no, I agree. And I think that the prompt building is actually where we as women can really shine and really say, okay, we're going to be very thoughtful and we're going to be very, decided in how we ask these questions and say to it, do not give me fake answers, fact check your work and think about the women who have answered these questions and find me more female references for
Yes.
if you're looking up period, any kind of backup material. So I always say like, find me 5 articles written by women on,
Yes.
SaaS remediation, and then go from there. And if she can't find them, I do call mine a girl too, by the way.
I
But
love
if she
that.
can't find if she can't find them, then obviously we have to resort to the male ones. But that is sort
Yeah.
of my approach. So
Yeah.
if
I
every
love that.
woman every week asked it to find female references, imagine how we'd change the machines,
Absolutely. I love that. I
right?
think that's a great idea. I need to start doing more of that because I think I'm constantly trying to frame it around kind of the human element and getting it to think outside of, a machine and really the customer experience for sure, but really the human experience of there's emotion behind all of this. We
Mm-hmm.
don't want to lose sight of that in the age of speed and efficiency, and all of that is so important. And there's such an advantage to how we're using AI, especially in the company I'm currently working with. We have so many ideas for how we're going to build internal efficiency as well as helping our customers thrive in really exciting ways using AI. But we're not going to lose track of the people that are behind that and supporting those efforts. And so,
Right.
uh,
Yeah,
again,
it's really it's a happy evolution if you
yeah,
take it that way. So, and it's just another tool. Like I grew up in the time when we didn't have, AOL and
yeah, we had the
Google
little
and
paperclip thing in Microsoft, I think, that you
right,
would ask
right.
maybe a
I
question or
do miss
two.
Clippy though. I really do miss
Oh,
him. I
I
loved
know.
him.
He was great.
So, yeah, but although he could have been a girl.
Yes.
So,
Yes, that's
yeah,
very true.
right.
Yep.
We'll have to make a new one. Yeah. Yeah. So this was a great conversation. And I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add into it. And you're welcome to, because I love to hear your thoughts.
No, I think just for your viewers, kind of last tips or tricks or some advice that I can give again is really seeking within your network, within even your own organization or external, really find those people that you can lean on towards that mentorship, the allyship as well, and then also the sponsorship. So if you don't know how to find those folks, that's okay. I think that it really just comes back to asking folks if they're willing to have that thought leadership with you, provide that partnership, and find those mentors, find those, even the male allies, because they are such an important piece. And they have been, in my experience, to build that level of comfortability and confidence so that you can really put your best foot and your best work forward. And so don't shy away from having uncomfortable conversations, seeking help and advice. I wish that I would have been more vocal when I jumped into tech about what I needed and how I totally felt out of my element and felt I didn't know who I should lean on and when. And so ask questions a lot, reach out to your networks, and absolutely engage in those meaningful conversations because they're going to prove incredibly valuable to you in your experience as you continue to grow in your career.
Right. And as just sort of a side note to that, I think sort of self-doubt and anxiety about having those conversations is not gender specific. We like male, female, it doesn't matter. We all have that same sort of anxiety about going into an uncomfortable conversation. So, like, we just have to know we're each human, and
Yeah,
anything that you've made up in your mind that's going to happen is probably not going to happen. So just, check it out, figure out what it's going to do. So,
that's exactly right. I think we all experience, especially when we're in leadership, we don't necessarily want to ask for help or feel like we should. I
mhm.
think that's a shared universal experience, regardless of gender. Is that sometimes we don't know how to walk into those scenarios and be uncomfortable. And sometimes we live in that discomfort too and really find our own path. So I hope that this was helpful to have people be thinking about how they could look for mentors and sponsors. And I absolutely think that for our male counterparts, there's such a need for that allyship so that we can make sure that we have really diverse and inclusive environments, conversations, because I think that ultimately leads us to the best possible results that we can for the
Right.
business, for the customers, and we need
Yeah.
both sides. We're not
Right.
trying to have a us versus them or, anyone take over or
No.
anything like that. We all deserve a place at that table, and I know that it can be sometimes uncomfortable feeling like you don't know how to get there. So
Right.
lean on your community.
Exactly. So my last parting question, if your life had a theme song, what would it be?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I am not sure that I can think of anything off the top of my head.
All right, well then pick a song that like gets you through when you're like a little angry at the LLMs or the male counterparts or
Yeah.
the patriarchal society.
Yeah. What good strong female artists can I come up with? There's so
Oh
many
yeah,
of.
don't give me a guy. No, it's inclusive. We're all about inclusivity.
Yes, I promise. I'm not against our male counterparts. I absolutely do love them and I'm so grateful for them. I think just in general, probably of my career and the theme of how I approach life is embrace the uncomfortable, embrace the
Mm-hmm.
discomfort. Change only happens when the fear of staying the same is greater than the fear of the change. And so I've just
Mm-hmm.
used that throughout my life, through my career, to identify new opportunities, to jump into things that I might not have in the past. And I think that really, again, that move from the traditional, very female dominated environment I was in to tech really helped me understand that living in that place of discomfort can actually provide me the most growth. And I am very grateful and appreciative of that experience because I don't know what my career would have been like without that. I don't think I would have ever left that company or that kind of trajectory. And so I'm very, very glad that I took that leap of faith and that I lived in that really uncomfortable place. There was lots of tears when I first joined tech, but I'm very grateful because I think that it's really pushed me in some really exciting directions.
Okay. You still haven't named a song though.
No, I can't think of one off the top of my head, Tara. Let's be honest.
I'm sorry. All right, well we'll skip it. What was the last thing you listened to on your iPhone or, Spotify or whatever your
I've been very into Olivia Dean lately. I
Okay.
think she just won the best new artist in the Grammy. She's got this kind of jazzy kind of voice, bluesy
Mm-hmm.
kind of R&B voice, and I
Yep.
just love her. Speaking of, strong women, like incredible presence, stage presence, artistic presence, I've been loving her. So I was just
Okay.
listening to her album last night. So probably any of
Great.
her songs I could probably somehow correlate in my life, but I've really been loving her.
Okay. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being here. We loved having you and hopefully we'll bring you back for another like roundtable if we get a few more women
Yes,
to,
absolutely. Thank you so much
get
for the
together and
conversation. It's been so great.
all right. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
But I wonder now and then if things just might have been the same if I were happy, never to break that glass ceiling.
Thank you for joining us today. As you listen to Emma Langford, here are a few other women who have broken the glass ceiling and chosen to hold the door open behind them. This is Rosie Rewired, and together we can do it.
And I don't mind, no, I don't mind. I'm just trying to find my peace of mind.